All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello all, we are on. Very excited, hope everyone had a great weekend. It was special, it really was. It was special. It's great to see so many people in the chat. Already, this show can be, I'm going to say improved by you participating live in the chat. It's quite a robust chat community. And you have the added risk that at any moment, Kim could swoop in and chit you, and then she'll put you in timeout, or even worse than that, she'll excommunicate you.
Kim, how are you?
It's crazy how it can happen. And just you can go from 0 to persona non grata, just like that.
Sayonara, sucker.
Yeah, it happens. I'm just saying. So, anyway.
Why are you yelling?
It is a delight to have everybody here. We've got a lot to go through. Donald Trump and the steamrolling of Kristen Welker in that interview on Meet the Press.
That was something.
That was something. He's good at what he does, man. I'll tell you what. You can say what you want about Donald Trump, but he's good at what he does. And he just blows you away with BS, and you can't even do anything off him. At least if you're the mainstream media. I say mainstream because I have seen people like, I want to say Mehdi Hassan does a really nice job of real-time checking politicians. The European interviewers do a better job in general, I think, than, and the sample size is small, so to be fair, this is a wild generalization. But there's something about American interviewers that almost dictates a graciousness, as though they're less concerned with holding someone to account and more concerned with there not being acrimony during the interview. Mm-hmm. Acrimony would be a ding word. Mm-hmm. But you see my point on that? The interview I'm going to put to the side for the moment because ABC's Jim Avila is going to join us, the former senior correspondent at ABC News, who's been vocal about the way that Trump should be interviewed and covered if he's going to be covered that way. So I want to get to that in just a couple of minutes. First, I do want to take care of some housekeeping. It has nothing to do with politics or anything, but we have the commissioner of sports on this show. He is Albert. Albert handles everything on the show in terms of video and guests alongside Kim. He helps out. But his real role that he's always able to respond to is his role as commissioner of sports.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah. So, Albert, without any further delay, we do need to ask you about the game this weekend. It was the big Niners-Rams game. Thoughts, please, Commissioner.
It was a tough game, but credit to the Rams. I thought the Rams played really well. I thought the Niners defense, they were getting a little greedy. They didn't want to rush Stafford, and then you saw the second half adjustment. We started blitzing, and we were a lot more effective. So we pulled out with the win, but a very epic weekend in football in general.
Yeah, before we leave the Niners, Albert, were you concerned or in any way noting the fact that the Rams seem not to have dried up and blown away? They seem as though they could be competitive. Would you agree with that?
I think our standards were low. They set the bar low for themselves this year, Mark. So that
did they do an Albert? They did.
Yeah,
they set the bar
clearly
low?
exceeded it in the first 2 weeks very quickly. So I recommend they slow it down a little bit. But yeah, they're a really sneaky good team.
Right. So you've got that. Tell me what else happened around the league. Some big comebacks.
Yeah, so we had a Broncos game where they threw a Hail Mary that actually connected. They got
that
them
was
to 2 points.
Unreal.
It was unbelievable. So Russell Wilson just threw the ball up there the last seconds. They actually scored. They didn't get the 2-point conversion to tie it, though. So
Well, they almost, in a way, that was poetic justice. They didn't deserve,
They didn't need to. They didn't expect to be in that spot either.
Right, but it still would have been super exciting. The Giants, they came back, right?
Yeah, and the Niners get to play them on Thursday. They had an epic comeback led by their star player Saquon Barkley, who's injured. So I don't think he's going to play against the Niners, which is good for our Niners, but probably not good for the viewers out there watching another Giants game. They're probably going to get rolled. Just like
it's certainly that's a major weapon, Saquon Barkley. So that'll be Thursday night. Niners play there. If you're just wondering why we talk about the Niners, this is a show that came from San Francisco. So we sort of, again, concentrate or gravitate toward San Francisco teams. We try to take care of all our Californians. So that's where you also mentioned the Rams, of course, played the Niners, and the Chargers. God, they're so exciting, but they just can't quite get it done, huh, Albert?
Yeah, they always tend to shoot themselves in their own foot at some point. So they had a really exciting quarterback. They had a couple key injuries last week going into the games, but yeah, it's a little unfortunate. And we did see some other cool stuff. Sunday Night Football, the New England had an epic lateral that wasn't a first down. They needed the first down. The guy caught the ball. He threw it back to an offensive lineman. The offensive lineman looked like he never touched the ball in his life before, and I thought they got the first down. A typical NFL no fun league. They didn't call it a
they didn't get it. I thought he made it too, but they said he did not. Didn't make the line of gain. The line of gain. Is that what they call it, Commish?
Yes, you're right on point. I saw one of the Jets doing for quarterback here by John Watson. They have their original first-round draft pick before Aaron Rodgers. They had Zach Wilson.
Yeah. That's your sports wrap from Albert, who is the commissioner of all things sports on this show. So bravo, sir. Nice job.
The Mark Thompson Show.
5 Americans out of Iran. They've departed Qatar. They're expected to arrive in the United States later today. They all had been designated as wrongfully detained. As you know, they were freed as part of this big deal that includes unfreezing $6 billion of Iranian assets. This has been going on for years. And 3 of those people have been in prison for more than 3 years. I'm sorry, more than 5 years. Wow.
What's interesting is that America has made a deal to release this sanctioned money, but right after these 5 were released and, back on safe soil, the United States decided to issue new sanctions against Iran. They are targeting the Ministry of Intelligence and former Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. And they're the second set of sanctions imposed under an executive order signed by President Joe Biden, trying to punish organizations or criminals responsible for holding Americans captive.
So much for whatever deal they made is kind of what we're getting at. Although those assets and unfreezing them was pretty huge.
Yep.
So these new sanctions, the sanction game is its own game with all sorts of details and all sorts of aspects and strategies associated with it. And it can affect exports. It can affect existing assets. You really have to, when we've imposed sanctions, that can mean so many things. And so in this case with the Iranians, they've unfrozen all these assets, but there are other sanctions in place. And so...
The Biden administration is saying the deal to free Americans from Iranian detention has not changed our relationship with Iran in any way. Iran is an adversary and a state sponsor of terrorism, according to a Biden official. We will hold them accountable wherever possible. So there's no touchy-feely, la, you release 5 people and now we love you. No.
There's no kumbaya moment
there's not,
between the Iranians and the Americans. It's still, all pretty ugly, everybody. Yeah. So,
good day, sir.
There you are. Give me my people. And now let's get back to sanctioning you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The UAW strike continues, the WGA strike continues, and the after SAG strike continues. There are other rumblings across labor. Labor is having a moment in America. I'll remind you, the railroad strike just within the last year, the administration actually stepped in and made something of a difference in getting to the end of that. A little bit later in the show, if there's time, I want to play you a little bit of the UAW chairman who was on Face the Nation this week. And they're a world apart. And they make some important points, one of which is, hey, our managers, our CEOs, our management team might be the best way to put it, not the managers on the floor, but the CEOs, the C-suites, they're making insane money. $30 million a year is the CEO of GM, I believe.
Yeah. Did you see the interview where she's asked about it?
And she says she merits it, she said, because of her performance, right? Isn't that what she said?
It's all performance-based. So if the company doesn't do well, she doesn't do well. It's just a way to deflect how much money you're actually getting compared to how much money, the guy bolting things together that you couldn't make the product without is getting.
Well, to that point, the UAW chairman was asked about that or noted it and said, hey, great that you view it as tied to your performance. It's actually tied to, as Kim says, the performance of our people on the floor, building those cars. You have built your fortune on the back of labor.
Right.
And to his credit, Joe Biden came out in favor of the workers. And Bernie Sanders, of course, made terrific, full-throated endorsements of the workers. That was on Friday. And Trump, when asked about it, said, I'm with the workers. And then he gave an answer that was all about how the workers have to make a deal. I don't think their leadership is being fair to the kind of deal they can make. And if they don't grab the deal that management is offering them, they're going to lose all their jobs to China. He literally said that. So Trump so cleverly says, well, I'm with the workers, of course. The workers of America, they deserve to be paid a decent wage. Then he segued immediately to they ought to take the deal that's on the table. Now, the deal that's on the table is this 21% increase, and they're saying that's not enough. And what they're facing at the UAW and the automotive industry generally is this rapid transition to electric vehicles, and they don't want to be left behind. They want to be compensated fairly. And they also note that a lot of these battery factories, et cetera, a lot of the aspects and components of the world of EVs being populated by non-unionized workers. So there's that as well. So you really do have an inflection moment for labor, and they point to it. They know it, that this may be one of the most important contracts they'll make and they'll arrive at, and as a result, maybe one of the most important strikes that they've come to. And the last thing I will say about this, and then I want to get to Jim Avila, and I want to do this Welker interview with Trump. But the only last thing I will say is, you'll recall that the U.S. did bail out the auto industry in the huge crash of 2008. Was it 2008? They bailed out the auto industry. And in bailing out the auto industry, workers had to take a little bit of a haircut also, just to keep the industry going. Mm-hmm. Now, that money was repaid, but, unclear that taxpayers got every last dollar. But more to the point, that industry was rescued, and workers did take a hit then. To ask them to take another hit because the industry is threatened, it's an odd look given the fact that, again, CEOs and C-suite occupants are making so much money in the auto industry. Randy says, let me put my credibility glasses on for a moment, they want a huge pay raise, pensions, and health care. I'd give them a raise in either pension or health care, not both. Randy, very tough taskmaster, that Randy. Yeah. So you don't want to give them both pension and health care? Benno, it's either pension or health care. Now, why do you say that, Randy? Just because you're a hard ass, or you think that is that the position? I mean, that's the intermediate position, compromise position? Anyway, to be continued.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I can't debate Randy every damn day on this show. All right. Please welcome someone who I really wanted to bring in on this Trump Welker interview that aired on Meet the Press. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring him in is he's written extensively about the way to interview so many of these political leaders who fabricate in the moment this web of utter misinformation. How to deal with a fire hose of lies along the lines of what we saw in that Meet the Press interview. The former senior ABC News correspondent, Jim Avila. Hi, Jim.
Good morning, Mike and Kim. How are you?
Hi.
Jim, I want to just jump into this. We'll watch a little bit. We'll stop. I thought it was an utter embarrassment. And but Albert, can you just run a little bit, and we'll, as I say, we'll start and stop as necessary a little bit.
Records Act. But let me ask my question so we can get to foreign
Wait a minute.
policy.
This comes within the Presidential Records
Let me
Act.
ask-
That's what it's about. It's
Let me
about
just
records.
ask these questions, and then we can move on to some other topics. You are facing 4 indictments, 91 felony charges.
If you would say it properly, I'm facing 4 Biden indictments. He told the Justice Department to indict him, or Merrick Garland said, let's indict him.
Let me ask you this, Mr.
They
President.
indicted
Well,
the political
that's just
I
not
just
the way it
want-
went down. Stop right now. I didn't know we were going to start in the middle of the interview, but here we are. I mean, that's just absolutely not true. I mean, Biden, just go ahead, Jim.
Well, there's no evidence for that at all. And all she had to say was, first of all, the technique of, they claimed there was going to be fact checking, and it was not done contemporaneously. And they needed to do that. And it was on tape. So all they had to do was let him make that answer, or halfway of the answer. Freeze. Stop the tape. Insert. That's not true. There's no evidence that President Biden had anything to do with the indictments. And in fact, he has not commented on the indictments whatsoever. It's just false. Everything that he says is false.
But Jim, let me just make this point, though. From the standpoint of presentation, it would be almost awkward, though, to, do an interview, keep stopping it and posting and describing along the lines of what you're talking about. I'm not saying that what you're saying or suggesting wouldn't be the righteous and truthful way to go. I'm just saying it would be such an odd thing to see. It would almost feel like an attack on Trump, even though it's a fair criticism that he's, but maybe it would work. Continue, if you would, please, Albert. We'll watch a little bit more.
You on this. I want to know what's in your head. When you go to bed at night, do you worry about going to jail?
All right, stop right here. Stop right here. First of all, he's gotten away with calling them Biden indictments. Now she asked this question. I thought this is the kind of question that a 9-year-old would ask or an 8-year-old would ask. Like, Mr. President, in your head, do you worry about going to jail? I mean, it was elementary school level, I thought.
Well, it was not, it was not maybe at the end of the interview after you've, gone through all this stuff and the important things, maybe. But
Okay.
Let me just go to your awkward point. Is it awkward what we're doing right now? That's what I'm suggesting, is that they could have, and much more seamlessly than what we're doing,
Sure.
they could have easily have played a statement, stopped, and said, here is the context, or here is the truth about what Mr. Trump is saying. And that, would it have been shocking? Would the right wing would have gone off the charts? So what?
Sure. Okay,
I
that's
don't
fair.
care.
Yeah. Go ahead,
He
Albert.
agreed to sit down. You're not going to allow him. I'm not going to allow him to get on my program, the venerable Meet the Press, the granddaddy of all Sunday morning shows, and allow him to lie after lie after lie without being challenged. It's wrong.
That's certainly true. That's absolutely true. Go ahead, Albert.
I don't even think about it. I'm built a little differently, I guess, because I have had people come up to me and say, how do you do it, sir? How do you do it? I don't even think about it. These are corrupt people that I'm dealing with. They're destroying our country. I don't even think about it. All I think about is making the country great, making America great. Look, these are political, these are Banana Republic indictments. These are third world indictments. The president of the United States sees how we're doing. We have a movement, the likes of which has never happened in this country before. And you see it with the polls. I mean, I'm up on these people by 60 points and 59 points. I don't mean I'm at 59. I'm leading them by 59. You almost say, like, why are they campaigning? Asa Hutchinson, he's at 0. Christie's at 2. Other ones are at 1. DeSanctimonious is at 9. I just see a poll come. I mean, I'm leading him by 60 points.
Mr.
And you
President,
say, why are they doing it? But here's what they did. They saw this happening. And he went to the Attorney General of the United States and he told them, indict Trump.
there's just no evidence of that,
Oh,
Mr.
why?
President.
Because you mean
But
he's on it?
let's stay on
Look at
track.
all the lies he's
Mr.
told.
President, I want to talk
Kristen,
about
wait a
you.
minute. Wait. Could I say one thing? Look at all the lies he's told over the last couple of weeks. He said he was at the World Trade Center, and he wasn't. He said he flew airplanes, right? He didn't. He said he drove trucks, and he didn't. Everything he says is like a lie. It's terrible.
Mr. President,
Even his handicap
I
in golf.
wanna
He said
stay-
he's a 6. He's not a 6.
I want to stay focused on you
Oh my
for the
God.
purposes of this interview, okay? Because it's important that we hear from you
Yeah.
about all of this. Tell
Well,
me
I'd
what,
like
Okay,
you to,
so-
but you keep interrupting me.
tell me
I think, Jim, that's just a classic Trump riff. He takes the question, pivots, and then just starts riffing about, and then talking about his poll numbers and his dominance, and then plays the aggrieved party at the end. That's why I was laughing. Like, I'd love to talk, but I'd love to talk about me, but you keep interrupting.
Yeah. At some point, if you're going to decide, make the decision. This is a big, NBC News, I worked for them for 12 years, is a big, powerful, important, most of the time legitimate organization. There were a lot of people who had their hands on this decision to invite Donald Trump on Meet the Press as the first interview for Kristen Welker. They should have, once they made that decision, and they claimed they were going to do all this stuff to hold him accountable. Instead, what they did was they presented a lame 11 things he said that were untrue on their website.
Right.
Okay, that's the equivalent of printing on the front page, Dewey beats Truman on the front page, and then on the back page the next day saying, "Oh, we were wrong." That just doesn't cut it. That's just not the way you do this. And they should have been more inventive. They're smart people. They could have done what I'm suggesting and edited him. If you got him to sit down and agree to a taped interview that you could edit, then you got to use it. You got to do it the right way. And
Sure.
they did.
Why tape it if you're literally just not going to correct it? It was corrected so tepidly, as you suggest, a little bit online and primarily online and a little bit on the air. Luis in the super chat sends in this big shout out for the super chat.
Big shout out.
Aside from creating more evidence for prosecution, Trump interviews are a waste of time. He is, quote, built differently, equals most people are not sociopathic, narcissistic, compulsive liars. I mean, it is true. No one would stand up in the face of everything he's facing and completely deny it. It's proven to be an effective way to proceed, particularly to his cult. They, of course, want to hear revisionist facts. And I wonder how much of his stuff, again, the reason we think it important to challenge it in the moment, Jim, is because if you don't challenge it, there's an implicit suggestion that it might be a legitimate statement that he's made.
Yeah, let me give you a little insight into what's going on here, okay? I know Kristen Welker. She sat 4 seats over from me when I was at ABC News, sitting in the front row of the White House press room. She is a nice woman. She is a good journalist, a good reporter. She is not experienced at doing interviews, and frankly, she's not mean enough. You have to be mean. You have to have a tough crust to be able to sit there across from Donald Trump and refute him and be not afraid of being rude, not afraid of saying, "No, excuse you, Mr. President. That's not true." You have to be able to say that. And she's not. That's not who she's cut out to be. Now, you put him in front of that MSNBC guy, who I can never remember his name, Mehdi
Mehdi
something
Hassan,
like that.
yeah.
Yes. Now, or a British TV interviewer who,
Right.
they are great at this. And
Yeah,
they will
I mean, even
continue to
Piers
ask this.
Morgan. I mean, Piers Morgan is tough. Yeah.
You just, what you do is, and she didn't do this at all, is you ask the same question again. No, Mr. Trump, you didn't answer the question. Here's the question again. And ask it until he answers it or until he gets up and leaves. And I'm fine with him getting up and leaving. That's, if you want to make a splash and you're at NBC News, make Donald Trump stand up and leave because you held him account. That's what would have done it.
I wondered after this thing went down what people said. They had their little, their round table of pundits. And one of them said, well, I think it's important to have him on because he's a candidate, for president. He leads the Republican field. It's really his party. That's almost a direct quote. And he needs to be
Peter Baker of the New York Times.
Peter Baker, thank you, the New York Times. And then Peter Baker said this, and he needs to be fact-checked, which you did in real time. I'm thinking, she did? I mean, you just floated a lie, Peter Baker. That's absolutely not true. One thing she didn't do was fact-check him in real time. I mean, I think there might have been 2 instances in which she pushed back. I thought that was kind of a lame way to do it. And they put Peter Baker in kind of an awkward position. He's a paid consultant for NBC News. He's paid to be on that show. And to make him be the person on the show to defend their decision, I think was unfair. Somebody should have asked Kristen Welker that question. And I'm sure they are going to be. Or an NBC News president or an NBC News executive producer. The people who made those decisions on how to handle it. They didn't handle it correctly. And, back to my point is that Washington, D.C., if you're in that bubble, and I was in that area for a long time, nobody wants to offend anybody because they're going to go to the cocktail party the next day. Okay? They're going to be at the luncheon the next day. Shoot, Kristen Welker decided she was going to she had dinner with the Trump brain team 2 weeks before this decision to invite him on for an interview. Had a big dinner with him, along with other Washington reporters. The night of the debate is what Jim's talking about, along with the head of CBS News and a lot of other luminaries from the world of broadcast news. It was embarrassing.
And that's not unusual. Yeah. I haven't criticized that. It's not unusual to have off-the-record meetings with campaign people and political people. I did it all the time. What's unusual is that Trump has changed the rules, okay? These are people who, they're not to be trusted. Jason Miller was at that meeting. Jason Miller is a bald-faced liar. To have him, to go sit down with him is excusing what he does. So you have to draw the line with these people, and they're not doing it. The rules should have changed in Washington, and they have not.
What should happen with the covering of Trump? Because this is just the beginning. This is hailed as a big interview, because it was his first broadcast interview, and they talked about that at the very beginning. And I think your take on Welker is so right on. I mean, that jives with what I'm seeing, which is just somebody who doesn't. I made the point before we came to you that American interviews generally are typified by a graciousness, and the American interviewer is typically someone who the most they'll do is say, Mr. President, there are those who say that blah blah blah. They'll try to couch things in such a way as to it's not to offend and not to make for a hostile moment. European interviewers are far less fearful of that sort of situation. And I'm wondering, moving forward, because we're in America and there are going to be American journalists covering these guys, what is there a strategy, Jim? I don't know, from a realistic standpoint, that your idea of stopping and starting things and calling out lies is going to work. I mean, or is there somebody on the bench at these news organizations that can dust themselves off and jump into the game and be rougher with these? It's not just Trump, but Trump's the apex predator of lying.
Well, at my old network at ABC, George Stephanopoulos does a pretty good job at this. He has been holding these people to account. When he did the interview with Donald Trump, which was actually when he was still president, he he did challenge him, and he did say, "No, Mr. President, that's not true." And you have to have somebody who is not afraid of doing that, and is not afraid of taking the heat then afterwards from the right wing. I think that on cable, there's a few people who could do that. I think that Jake Tapper's pretty good at it. I think that Rachel Maddow doesn't get into those type of confrontational interviews. She's much better at getting a bunch of facts together. She would do the good post-mortem on this. Right. She would get all the facts together and do. As far as a one-on-one interviewer, she's a little polite too. She doesn't want to get herself in that position. Nicole Wallace might be able to do it. There are some people out there who can do it. Kristen Welker is just not that person. Major Garrett at CBS is also a pretty tough guy, and he could do it. In the old days when I was there, John Carl was not. John Carl was not very tough. He's gotten better, and I think that he might do that. In fact, I'll tell you a little story. I don't know how much time you have, but when we were both at ABC, John Carl, during the campaign of the 2016 campaign, John Carl had an interview with Donald Trump, and he asked him about Hillary's numbers, which were high, and Trump got upset about him doing that, got up and walked off. ABC, this is the cowardice of the networks. ABC didn't run the part where he walked off. Instead, what they did was John Carl, a producer, one of the producers, by the way, who was there was John Parkinson, who got in a lot of trouble this weekend, and at the time, and ABC News senior vice president was there, and they got with Trump in a corner of the room off camera and convinced him to come back and promised him they would not run that question or his walking off, and he continued the interview. Wow. That's the kind of cowardice we are dealing with at the network levels. Now, some of that has changed over time. Those people aren't there anymore.
Well, I wonder what kind of deal was made with NBC. They seem to not, was he allowed, in order to get this interview on Meet the Press, was he allowed to say what he wants and know that he'll essentially not be fact-checked in real time? Or I don't know, was anything off limits? Or it was unclear to me if some deal was made, because she seemed awfully, I guess it all really is at the feet of politeness, but it's just crazy how timid she was.
Yeah, that's the Kristen Welker I know. It was not, and that's why I had some reservations about her doing this. I've had some reservations about, even though I like her as a person and I think she's a good journalist most of the time, I was worried that she would be Chuck Todd too. And unfortunately, she may have even came off even worse than Chuck Todd. Oh, yeah. Now, how do you handle this in the future? Do you in fact allow Donald Trump to come on your programs? There's an argument to be made that yes, as they're making, that he is, the Republican frontrunner, and he is a former president of the United States. But I think there have to be strict rules that you have to be willing, and he has to agree to the fact that he's going to be checked. He's going to be fact checked in real time. And just as if Joe Biden goes on there and makes a stupid remark like he has done in the past, he's got to be called on it. I don't think that he's any different than I do think he's different. I don't think that he should be treated any differently than Donald Trump if he lies. And I will say this last thing, Jim. We're talking to ABC's Jim Avila, former ABC news correspondent. Yeah, you better say former ABC now.
Yeah, former ABC senior news correspondent, and covered the White House for so many years. But there are different kinds of lies, By the way, I'm not a fan of any lies, but they do fall on a spectrum. And there's the grandpa thinks he taught 4 years of whatever at Penn State lie of government. Let me tell you, I was dean of the poli-sci department for 4 years, whatever. I was at ground zero the next day when you were actually there the following week or whatever it was, or 4 days later. There's that kind of lie. And again, I'm not sanctioning it, but I am putting it on a spectrum in a place that's not as bad as lying about the outcome of an election, okay? That's a very big deal. And so I think when, and we talk about, and the lies made up about those poll workers and the lies, there's so much at stake here. The lies that essentially incite an insurrection. I mean, those lies fall on the spectrum in a different place than do the lies about, oh, let me tell you, I was a professor of government at, again, I don't like either, but both are not the same. So, Jim, some closing thoughts, and then we are moving on.
Well, I'm sorry I missed a lot of that. My signal dropped out. I think I'm back, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
We're just wrapping up, so go ahead, please.
Okay. Well, my closing thought is that this was a disaster waiting to happen. I thought that NBC set some ground rules where they could have been effective, and then they didn't. They decided not to be brave and do it. Should we continue to interview him? Only under certain very strict circumstances. He does. The good part about it, and I think your viewers have pointed some of this out. The good part about it is that when you allow Trump to talk, he's putting himself in prison. I mean, besides leading an insurrection and another insurrection with his followers, he said on this interview, that it was his idea to do the insurrection, which others had claimed that he was just listening to lawyers. He took full responsibility for that. He didn't mean to. He also may have gotten himself in prison for violating the latest judge's order when he said that his chief of staff, I'm hoping he's going to be loyal. Well, that's a key witness in the case. He's not supposed to address them. And for him to say that can be used. So I think those are problems. So he does, there is some value to allowing him to talk. You just have to be ready to challenge him. And I don't think NBC News was.
Yeah, indeed. Well, there's a lot coming out here in relation to it. And it's also worth noting that the Trump followers, and generally those who vote Republican, I guess that might be the way to put it. I was going to say the right. I don't know what the right is anymore. Right and left begin to get confusing on various topics. But they already have a pretty low regard for NBC. So it's funny that, the libs are angry at NBC. The conservatives are angry at NBC. It's a weird thing. Do we have something? Is this a super chat, Albert? Let me just see it from Trevor in Hollywood. Mark, I just sent you a dump of Trump. Oh, sorry, I didn't get them to. We're going to have new drops of Trump. It was wrong. It was stupid. And I'm trying to be a better person. That was Trevor wanting to let us know that he'll. There's no defense.
There is no defense for my conduct.
Exactly. So there you go. Jim, a treat to be able to talk to you. Harry, thank you for Jim's next margarita. $5 from Harry. How
Big
about
shout
it?
out.
Big shout out, Harry. Yeah. And Luis, this interview was actually worse than Caitlin Collins. Didn't think that was possible. Yeah, thanks, Luis.
Big
And
shout
I
out.
agree with that. And Jim essentially said the same thing. He said, this is actually, and he even said he thought it was worse than likely a Chuck Todd interview would be. Sort of held back by sort of what is baked into this host. She can only do so much. She feels pressure of sorts and can only go so far. Jim, we'll talk to you on Friday, and thank you for being with us today. Appreciate it. Jim Avila, everybody.
Thanks. Good to be with you.
Yeah. Wow.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I have my credibility glasses on now, and I am able at full strength to review all things that have come in, and there has been something that's come in from my favorite CPA. It's, wait a minute, it's Stan. Come on, Stan Pollock.
Big shout out.
He is my favorite CPA. There he is with a 10 spot. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We are completely crowdfunded, which is why we call them out. Super sticker. Thank you for
Big
the
shout out.
super sticker, Spencer. If you want to be part of our crowd that does fund us and keep us on the air day to day, your name can run at the end of our show as well. We run all the names of our patrons. Anybody who is a PayPal supporter or a Patreon supporter, you get your name on the end of our, and a lot of people say, I don't want my name posted, or please don't worry about acknowledging me. And sometimes very generous donors indicate that. It means so much. We are here every day because of you, our donors. And so if you want to be one of them, please go to themarkthompsonshow.com, themarkthompsonshow.com. Albert, I did a whole big ramp up. You just hear me do that whole ramp up about a donation. If you want to be part of it, we post all the end of it. I was giving you, that's a full 35-second ramp up for you to get the banner with a thank you. What is going on here? I ask for a modicum of professionalism.
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what
and
the hell
I
they do it
cannot
for.
even get a modicum of professionalism.
Why are you yelling?
This is what pays the bills around here. If you want to support the show, visit themarkthompsonshow.com and click Patreon or PayPal, and the links will take you to PayPal and Patreon, and that's where you can support us. You can help keep us alive. TheMarkThompsonShow.com. I'd like to do a news capsule. This is actually a situation, Albert, I need your help. After I've just scolded you, I need your help.
Albert, thank you.
Albert, what do? I'd like to do a news capsule with Kim and then do Courtney's segment, which actually on the anniversary, which is coming up, of the Polly Klaas murder, she's going to go through that. How would you recommend handling this? I'm most curious whether to, I don't have a guest coming up until Karen, right, at 11?
So we can bleed into the second hour with,
good.
with Mark's
All
murder.
right.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Albert, thank you.
All right, so this is what we're going to do. It is all Kim with a news capsule.
Yep.
Then we go to Courtney and Mark's Murder Mystery Monday. Turn in your hymnals, if you would, please, to news capsule as we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee. Let's talk about, nope, not Trump, the United Auto Workers Union. Talks continue. It is day 4 of the UAW strike against the big 3 U.S. automakers. United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain saying yesterday, negotiators have been making slow progress. Nearly 13,000 workers remain on strike at 3 plants in Ohio, Michigan, and Missouri over union demands for higher pay and other benefits as well. It happened today. These 5 Americans, citizens, are finally free after years of detention in Iran. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that he described an emotional conversation with the former captives after they landed safely in Qatar today. In exchange, Iran gets $6 billion in frozen assets released to them. There is a person under arrest in connection with an ambush murder of a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy in his patrol car over the weekend. Here he is, LA County Sheriff Robert Luna, saying Kevin Salazar was taken into custody just 36 hours after the killing of Deputy Ryan Klickenbroomer. You can see him here pictured in the city of Palmdale. Luna said a search warrant was served at a home. Salazar was arrested after a barricade situation and tear gas deployment. So an arrest now in this case. A California bill authored by Democratic Assemblyman Bran Meienschein to designate pet-friendly emergency shelters for animals in disasters like fires, floods, and mudslides passed last week. It's interesting because many people have reported that they were forced to leave their pets when they were evacuated during disasters because they had nowhere else to take their animals.
Oh my
Officials
God.
say it was championed by the American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. This bill now heading to Governor Gavin Newsom. He has until October 14th to sign or to veto this bill. Hard to believe we don't have something like this already in place for people. You know,
You're right. And, you know, I'm glad you mentioned this organization, which is a big organization, the ASPCA, because you hear this a lot, and it's not completely without truth, that oftentimes these big organizations can suck up money, and it's caught up in administrative costs and other fundraising. And, we should direct our funds to, when it comes to animals in this case, or whatever it is, to oftentimes homegrown efforts, like smaller organizations that could more directly benefit from your dollars. But I would say this one thing before we kind of close the book on big organizations. To get laws on the books, you need big lobby money. You shouldn't have to need big lobby money, but in America, sadly, you do. You need an organization. Now, sometimes that organization can have its origins in grassroots movements, and I can give you chapter and verse on that, even within the animal movement. But to actually get this on Newsom's desk took a push, and the ASPCA helps with that push. So I don't completely close the book. I contribute to them. And I, also contribute to small organizations that are sort of slow burns when it comes to using your funds to make something good happen. But I really applaud the ASPCA in this instance for getting this law, as Kim says, that should already be on the books, finally close to being on the books.
It's frustrating, too, as somebody from a fire zone, as you guys are as well, that I have in my town, in Petaluma, we have this fairgrounds in the center of town. And during disasters, when there were wildfires raging in Santa Rosa, other fires in Healdsburg, multiple times, this has been used as a place where people could bring livestock, big animals, horses, cows, sheep, barn animals, because it's a fairly agricultural community, and a lot of people have larger animals that they need to leave their ranches during disasters, and they're trying to close down this fairgrounds or turn it into apartments or what have you. And I think communities need to remember, you have to keep a place for animals in times of disaster. You don't close down these places when they have been so needed in the worst of times. I love that statement. Thank you. And because wrapped up in that is concerns of developers and, money and greed and yet the urgent needs of a community also. So, Let's talk about Maui, because there is a petition going around. Many Hawaiians believe October 8th is too soon to reopen West Maui to tourists. A petition urging the state to cancel that plan received 3,600 signatures in less than 24 hours. Now, Lahaina will remain closed to visitors, but the plan was to reopen part of the surrounding area to visitors in less than 3 weeks. I will say, other cities on the island are open for business, and people are hoping that tourists will come back and spend tourist dollars there. Today begins the second week of Google's antitrust trial in Washington, D.C. The Justice Department is accusing the tech giant of paying off mobile carriers, smartphone makers, and browser operators to become the default search engine. Prosecutors say Google spent billions of dollars to secure 90% of the search market. Interesting times over at Instacart. They've got an IPO on tap. They are raising the potential valuation for the initial public offering by a significant amount now. The San Francisco-based grocery delivery company increased the stock price range between $28 and $30. So it would take the company's estimated valuation from $7.7 billion to $10 billion.
Wow, Instacart is Courtney's go-to boyfriend. Yeah.
What's a few billion between friends?
I think you drove that stock price.
They're the most reliable.
Yeah, more reliable boyfriend than the boyfriend that she has.
I'm just saying. Yeah. I'll just look away really quickly.
I couldn't believe how many.
Also worth more.
Yeah. How dare you? Dare you?
There you go. That's what I like to hear. Look at this contraption. This is the new Cruise prototype robotaxi that is wheelchair accessible. The self-driving vehicle, called the Cruise Wave, has been in development for 3 years. Cruise expects to begin closed course testing next month. It's got a little thing, rolls out. You can put your wheelchair up there. You can get inside. You lock your wheelchair in place, and it has seats for your companions if you are bringing somebody along for the ride. It kind of looks like a hearse in a way. I don't know. I'm not sure what kind of freaks me out.
We've made it look like a hearse. We've made it look like a hearse just for you.
You're really not riding to your death. It's okay.
We've never seen anything like it before.
Nobody has ever put something like this together that I've ever seen.
It looks like a hearse.
I have never heard of something like that. There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
I mean, it's either a hearse or like it's a carriage shape. So, but not a princess carriage. It's like the evil wicked carriage. I don't know. Something's happening with it. I don't know what I like that.
I want it to be wheelchair friendly, but I want the overall feel to have a kind of haunted, kind of dangerous quality. You know what I'm saying?
There's never been anything like this.
Yes.
Oh. Ed Sheeran, lastly. His performance Saturday in Santa Clara broke the event space's attendance record. That according to San Francisco 49ers president Al Guido. So I thought that Taylor Swift broke all the records, but close to 80,000 people attended this concert, making it a very impressive feat for a summer that has, again, already seen Beyonce and Taylor Swift stopping by the stadium. The previous attendance record at Levi's, nearly 77,000 people. That was set by WWE's WrestleMania 31 event in 2015. 49ers brass say they're still adding up the totals, which could take some time, but again, nearly 80,000 people for Ed Sheeran over the weekend.
Jeez, that's wild.
Yeah, that's a lot of fans, people.
Yeah, good stuff.
I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee.
Yeah,
and we
Coachella.
Have an exclusive deal for you. It's 10% off across the board, exclusive for Coachella Valley Coffee Company for Mark Thompson Show listeners, viewers. You need to chill on the coffee. Are you drinking the decaf? You need to get the Mark Thompson Why Are You Yelling?
The Why Are You Yelling decaf, by the way, I was rocking that all weekend, but it's after I've already had 11 calves.
Oh.
I go for the decaf. I know 11 might overstate it, but it's a lot, right, Courtney?
Yeah.
It's a lot. But their decaf is terrific. And so, I'm a calf guy, but you should knock around the website, as I've said before, and get the bean that's right for you. Somewhere in this world, there's a bean that's right for you. Go to CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, knock around the website, and you'll see tasting notes under each one of the beans. That'll give you a sense for things. And as Kim says, we have our own Why Are You Yelling decaf. So if that's your jam, you can get it and everything on the site. Teas and coffee and merch.
Teas are good. Good teas,
the teas are good, and Courtney drinks the tea as well. 10% off at checkout with the discount code MARKT. And we love Coachella Valley Coffee for sponsoring Kim's News.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great. When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
Yeah, we are on. It is Monday. Welcome all. Thank you, and a big shout out to our Patreon and PayPal supporters. Keep the show going and growing by both being a supporter, and if you can, share the show or a segment or a video or something you saw. Maybe it's in a short form. Go ahead and share it to your Facebook, because that helps us reach audience that, doesn't know about us. There are a lot of people who don't yet know about us. So we're happy to be growing, but the ability to grow more is definitely influenced by your support. One of the regular features of this show is from the world of true crime. My other half is obsessed with true crime. I could give an S about true crime. But I've been sucked in. It's clearly a thing. So now, without any further delay, here it is, Mark's Murder Mystery Monday.
Welcome to Mark's
Red Rum
Murder
Red Rum
Mystery
Red Rum
Monday.
Yeah. That blood-curdling scream can mean only one thing. Courtney, everyone.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Such an appropriate entrance. Yeah.
I am particularly interested in this story that you're going to feature today.
Yes.
Because it took place almost literally in Kim's backyard.
Yes.
It was very high profile and continues to be.
Yes.
Even I, who, as I've said, have no abiding interest in this whole world, I know this story, and it's particularly chilling, but it's also, it became a rallying for so much. I wonder if you can tell us the story of Polly Klaas. And Kim, maybe you can, is it okay if Kim
Yes, no, I was
Yeah.
going to say, please, because Kim was from Petaluma.
And she knows the story quite well.
Yes, exactly. We should qualify too, or at least give context to why we're talking about this, which is October 1st is the 30-year anniversary of the kidnapping and murder, which happened on October 1st, 1993. And also there's an upcoming 2020 special featuring the story, and there's apparently new information that will be within that show.
Yeah, that's 2020 Friday night, I believe, 9 to 11.
9 to 11. So
she was taken from her home? It was like an open window or something?
It's a bizarre story. I don't know. I'll start, but definitely come in, Kim, and add anything that I might be missing. But yes, on October 1st, 1993, Polly Klaas has a sleepover with two of her friends. And
she's how old, 12?
She's 12. And they're doing what you do at 12, ordering Domino pizza, putting on makeup, playing a board game. And she goes out of her bedroom to get sleeping bags. Now, she lives in a home with her mother and her little sister, Annie. Her little sister's her half-sister. And she goes to go get sleeping bags for the three girls to sleep in, right? Polly and her two friends. And as she opens the door to her bedroom, there's a stranger standing there. And he's got a knife, and he asks who lives here. And Polly says that she lives there. And he proceeds to tie up the three young girls and put pillowcases over their heads. He says, "Don't worry, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to take money." And then he says, "I'm going to take Polly now, and we're going to go look for the money. Count to 1,000, and by the time you've ended counting," he says to her two friends, "Polly will be back." Well, she never returned. It's strange because it didn't seem like he knew the house, and he never talked about casing the home. So to have a stranger enter a home and then kidnap a young girl with seemingly not really thought out plans is very bizarre. Even the cops said when they first arrived, like, this is a stranger, and this is a very weird incident.
So, go ahead. I didn't mean to affect the order. I was going to ask you, so then what happens?
Polly's gone. One of the young girls goes to the mother's room. The mother calls the police at just after 11. And by 11:30, an APB goes out. The police are at the home that this young girl has been kidnapped. Now, because the suspect was not wearing a mask, the young girls were able to give a very specific description of what he looked like, and they obviously knew what Polly looked like. Now, when the APB went out, it only went out on one channel, meaning it was only in the area of where Polly lived, which was Santa Rosa. So it didn't go out further than that. And 20 minutes later, a white Pinto is caught in a ditch 30 miles away from Santa Rosa. The police are called because this guy looks really suspicious, and a woman passes him. She calls the police. They arrive. They search the car. He's drinking. He's got an open container in the car, but they don't arrest him. What they do is they do a field intake at the time. Now, this is all happening around midnight, same day, now October 2nd, and they let him go. But if that APB had gone out further than just the channel around Santa Rosa, they would have caught him because he exactly matched the description of the suspect, and they would have known. Yeah, sorry.
Wow, that's
and Kim, I don't know if I'm missing anything. So we've gone through...
You've done pretty well. I will tell you this. This happened it's so emotional. This story is really what pulled me into news and gave me a passion for news. This story happened. This happened less than a mile from my house. I drive by Polly Klaas's house that you just showed. I try not to drive by, but probably at least once a week I end up driving down that street. I'm so affected by what happened here in this community. This is supposed to be a wonderful place to raise your kids for family. And this little girl, this beautiful child, plucked out of her home in the middle of the night. I was at the Polly Klaas Center while she was missing, putting flyers and envelopes to mail out. And my family every year has a picture of Polly Klaas on our Christmas tree so that we don't forget her.
Wow.
Wow.
It's it's really hard to see this 30 years from this, and to know that she was it was so close that, you know, that maybe she would have been found alive. Maybe this would have been different. It could have turned out differently.
Yeah,
this is the one story that I have a hard time with the death penalty, but this is that one story where I'm like, oh no, this is the guy that deserves it.
Well, it did actually lead, I think, to some changes in legislation. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
But this is a really important point, and I guess Kim just touched on it as well, that APB, the decision to keep it so limited, it's sort of, what did the cops later say about that? That's protocol, or that's what we normally do, or?
I've heard different reporting, and Kim can also contribute to this, but from what I heard, that was protocol, but also they were trying to limit the distribution of the information because the press listens to certain fields and channels. And so to limit that, they put it only on channel 1, but channel 3 would have gone to the surrounding areas. So those officers that were in front of Richard Allen Davis, who is a suspect and eventually was found guilty of her murder, he admitted to the murder, we would have had him and they would have been able to arrest him.
How soon after this did he become a suspect?
That's a good question.
Did they quickly close on this guy?
It's all relative, but within 2 months he was arrested and he admitted to it. So what happened is they let him go the night of, now it's October 2nd in the very early hours of the morning. On November 28th, the woman who owned the home where his car was stuck in a ditch, she's out looking around her property because she had hired loggers to take down some of these trees in a certain area. And during that surveillance of the area, she found items that would have belonged to Polly, that did belong to Polly. There was blood on those items, including ballet tights. Oh. And so she calls the police. And the police go and they find the items. And they now have this field intake for Richard Allen Davis. Apparently, they were able to match some of the items to Polly, definitely the ballet tights, because they had the same ballet tights from her house that they had taken as evidence the night of the kidnapping. I want to say blood, but I'm not sure there was DNA testing. But they connected those items to Richard Allen Davis. He was living on an Indian rancheria, which was in, is it Cloverdale, California? And so they go and they arrest him based on this evidence. Now, there was only one physical piece of evidence in Polly's room, and that was a partial palm print on her bunk bed. And they think that he left that when he was going to get the pillow covers for the girl's head. So they match that to him. They arrest him. Now, I think they arrested him maybe December 2nd or December 3rd. And by December 4th, he admitted to kidnapping and murdering Polly Klaas. He says he did not sexually assault her and actually goes so far as to say that, which we all know is false, Polly's last words were about her father molesting her. It was just very sick that this man would take this young girl, and
it's about the most evil thing you can say.
And put it onto the father. Exactly.
I mean, just given how horrifying the entire thing is. Yeah, I remember that for just as an awful. This guy is just
awful.
Yeah, he is not deserving of life. You know.
No, exactly. And so they find him, he's convicted on June 18th, 1996 of first-degree murder with 4 special circumstances, including robbery, burglary, kidnapping, and attempted ludac on a child. He is sentenced to death, and he's been on death row since 1996. But to the point that you made, two things happened in police protocol and in legislation after Polly's abduction and then murder. The first is they changed the way that the channels work with the CHP and the police. So now it goes out to a broader network when there is certain incidences. Because again, you remember that it didn't go out to the extenuating channels when she was first abducted. The second thing is the Three Strikes Act, which you talked about, which now Polly's two sisters, they're half-sisters, Jessie and Annie, have come out recently in the last several years in an op-ed in the Los Angeles Times talking about some of the challenges around the Three Strikes Act, and that their sister would not have wanted her legacy to be attached to these laws. And so, because he had Richard Allen Davis, who is the suspect now convicted for this murder, he had previous incarcerations, and he had previously been found guilty of kidnapping, among other illegal activities.
And now, who are the people we're seeing again?
Those are Polly's sisters.
Yeah.
They've worked tirelessly to uphold her legacy. There's the Polly class organization, foundation. There's a community center, which I'm sure that Kim knows. It's a community theater. Polly was an active in theater. She was an actress. She had ambitions of being an actress in Hollywood. So to keep her memory alive, they have created this community and community theater center.
It's lovely because she, like my kids, loved musical theater. And so to have her name on that in town is really good. But it's also, it's a reminder, and every time you see her name, it's a punch to the gut. And I can't believe it's been 30 years.
I remember Ron Owens, who's a talk show host on KGO. And of course, KGO is the big station in the Bay Area, so it was very much a part of all of this. I remember him very much wanting that three strikes law to go into effect and using the class case as a lever to make that argument. Later, he told me he felt that it didn't achieve what he'd hoped it would, that it was a mistake. But clearly, there's a need the community felt to do something, And I think the community is, and even hearing the story, you're so frustrated by that moment that, this guy got away, and you're frustrated by the way that he was able to play the system after being a repeat offender.
Well, his last offense, he was let out early because of overcrowding in the prison. And they, I don't know what the word is, they mixed up two of the numbers on his driver's license. Transpose them, the police, when they had him in that sort of field intake. But they would have seen some of his past issues. Oh, is that right?
Issues. When they entered his information, they transposed the numbers. Wow.
But also, he was let out early from prison, and he shouldn't have been. He was arrested for kidnapping somebody in the past, among other horrific crimes. But to the point that you're making, the sisters have been very vocal about three strikes also affecting people with crimes that aren't necessarily potentially harmful to others.
They're not the only ones. I just want to say, Courtney, because her dad, Mark, has been, ever since this happened to his daughter, worked tirelessly as an advocate for missing children. So he has now spent his life working to help find kids and being a spokesperson for the victims in these cases and their families.
Yes, just right. And
he's been super high profile.
Yes. It's a good, not a good, but it's a segue to something that I did want to mention was when Robin Williams died, Mark Klass wrote a really interesting piece about Robin Williams and just how much Robin Williams had given to the young girls. So Polly's two friends and Polly's sister. He met with them. He gave them signed copies of Mrs. Doubtfire's scripts. He spent time with them to make sure that he could try to bring a little bit of joy to their completely traumatized young lives. and he donated $10,000, and he acted as the MC at a fundraising event for her organization, all without any public recognition, and just that he was so kind in what he did to support the family. So,
no. 30 years. Wow, I was on a committee to raise funds at the time of her abduction. Such a sad memory, says Jerry. Yeah, really tough one for this community. Many residents of the community are viewers of this show. So
I'm curious to see what 2020 has. That's additional.
So 2020 has a special this Friday. So we'll hope to learn something. Or I think this story being told is an important one too. So, Courtney, sad on this coming anniversary of the poly-class abduction and murder, but really appreciate you telling the story and spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
It's Courtney, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's Mark's Murder Mystery Monday for today.
Mark's Murder Mystery Monday on the Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, the only thing that can shake me out of the funk that that story has put me in is some of the doings here on the show. I'm always into the doings, you know. I'm a big one for the doings. This show's got a lot of things going on, and I might add,
The Mark Thompson Show.
A spirited chat that goes along with it. If you haven't had a chance to check the show out live, I encourage you to do it on YouTube. We're on live every day from 11 a.m. Pacific time to 1 p.m. Eastern time. Now, 11 a.m. Pacific time, Albert, what time? Oh, I do want to recognize Johan. Johan is, I would say, Hall of Fame worthy. Wouldn't you agree with me on that, guys? Yeah. I think HOF for her monthly contribution, which I think is among the top contributions we get, and her regular contributions like this, a super sticker for $50.
Big shout out.
A big shout out. It's cry territory.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
It is cleanly cry territory.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
What I'm saying is you're in cry territory.
Why are you yelling?
Whether you want to be or not, you are in cry territory.
Why are you yelling?
Johan, I so appreciate you. In fact, I appreciate you so much that, wait a minute, let me make sure I have it. I believe I do have it. Do I have, Albert, is it over here? Hang on a second.
What are you
Where's
looking
my,
for?
Receive
yes,
the rod
I am.
of equity
Thank you.
and mercy.
Johan, and this is directed only to Johan so far today, and I don't do this lightly. It's with the powers vested in me as the Mark Thompson to whom they refer to, or it's to whom they refer when talking about the Mark Thompson Show. You need just receive
the rod of
equity and mercy. You only need to receive it, Johan. You need to do nothing more than receive
the rod of equity and mercy.
Yes, there it is. And the solemnity that comes with giving you the rod is something I do proudly. Thank you, Pinky, for $1 a day.
Shout out.
Big shout out to Pinky and all of you who support our show. We love you all. Spencer's another one.
Big shout out.
Love you, Spencer. Thank you for the $5. And is it Pamela? Pamela, thank you for the $5.
Big shout out.
Yeah, love it. We're crowdfunded and we do appreciate it. Hey, by the way, speaking of the interview that we talked a lot about at the beginning of the program, the last hour, we talked about the Donald Trump Welker interview on Meet the Press. And he noted along the way the lies told by Biden, you know, about the World Trade Center and about being the, teaching at Penn government. Mm-hmm. This from a columnist who covered Biden and made this post. I've covered Biden for 35 years. He's always been a babble merchant, prone to exaggeration and telling stories too good to be true, saying inexplicably wacky things. It was often clean up on aisle Biden. So when he acts like this now, it shouldn't be attributed to just aging. Certainly he has slowed down, but his staff has exacerbated the problem by trying too hard to keep him in check. Americans know who Uncle Joe is, quirks and all, slower and all. Let them decide, the point is made. I think that's interesting that we're so concerned about every little bit being sort of used against and weaponized against the president, if you're a backer of the president, President Biden, that you, to be fair, it's a little hard. Oh, that's Joe just being Joe, you know. You feel when you're president, there's a certain standard that you have to be held to when it comes to those things that you talk about and your own personal history. So what he has gotten away with for years, and he's gotten away with it to varying degrees. Sometimes he doesn't get away with it so long. I mean, the plagiarism situation probably knocked him out of a presidential race earlier in his career. But I think there is a quality of just sort of live and let live. But the White House cleanup crew, which wants to keep everything on point, you know, to what extent do they make things worse? I don't know. This is one journalist who's saying, hey, I've known him, and it's a no big deal. So if you missed what we said about the sit down that the former President Trump did with Welker, you can go back and listen to it. It's in the first hour. We had former ABC News correspondent Jim Avila weighing in on that. So I thought it was there were a lot of good points made. I think Donald Trump is a real special case, very, very hard to check, particularly if you're an American journalist. Americans are loath to, we're conflict averse, really, in a lot of these different situations. So we're loath to drag the candidate, in this case Trump, into really uncomfortable stuff because we're worried about them biting back. There was a wild thing that happened, and I loved it, and it was on the freeway around the Bay Area, and here it is.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I-80 traffic shut down to rescue a rabbit from the freeway. You saw this, Kim, I'm sure.
Little bunny, yeah. They shut down all of Interstate 80. Like usually, bunnies don't get that much love, but apparently this was a situation.
This is the yin and the yang of our relationship with animals, right? The minute they're free on the freeway and running around, we'll stop traffic to rescue them. Yeah. But put them in a slaughterhouse, and we can't wait to order the quarter pounder with cheese. It is wild to me even that you'll see oftentimes, because, you know, these huge trucks with these creatures packed in, and they're literally, there's no water, there's no food, there's nothing. They travel for days. Many of them die on the way. It's just, they just view them as product, part of the game. Right. But if that truck tumbles and those pigs go out onto the road and they're running around, it's like, oh my God, rescue that. Oh my God, that pig was almost hit by a truck. So they load the animals back up and they continue them back to their ultimate fate, which is about as ugly as it gets. This is the little rabbit, if you're watching on YouTube. Now, this little rabbit didn't fall out of a, truck bound for slaughterhouse, but 3 animal control officers arrived at the scene and stopped all westbound traffic.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Well, the traffic stopped on I-80, Larry, for a little rabbit.
What can you tell us about the scene?
It was a little rabbit, Larry. It took 3 animal control officers to take in the little cute thing. She is healthy and uninjured and doing well in our care, said Animal Care and Control. The rabbit was named Electra, and she'll be kept at the shelter for several days, hopes that her owner will claim her, the home from which she came. Mm-hmm. Scary, but it seems as though it had a kind of Hollywood ending, right?
Yeah,
San Francisco.
They got her. The big deal is delays for hundreds, if not thousands of people, but they got the bunny.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
There might be. They haven't done the investigation on whether or not there's alcohol involved. Apparently, San Francisco's experienced a bit of a boom in its rabbit population, is what they're noting here. Animal Care and Control in July waived all rabbit adoption fees to try and help alleviate the issue, partly brought on by people dumping rabbits in parks or breeding them irresponsibly.
There's never been anything like this.
And this responsible handling of animals, something that we seem to struggle with, you know. But anyway, that I saw that and I kind of smiled because I love that they brought the whole freeway to a close. I mean, to a halt. You know, it seemed like a good thing. I'd like to.
It's interesting. They don't do that for dogs because I used to get reports all the time doing traffic on KGO about, dogs running around the road or there's a deer on the side of the road or whatever. And they don't usually close traffic like that. So that story is interesting because of the big step they took. And that's kind of a surprise.
That's a really good point. I never thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a dog on the road. They don't stop traffic. They don't bring out 3 animal control people. No. Interesting. Yeah. I'd like to do some news here, Albert, if it's okay with you. And then we have, speaking of animals.
Albert, thank you.
We have our visit with Karen Dawn from Dawn Watch. She has news of the animal kingdom. So I still have to get her an open, a produced open. I need to reach out to Craig. He's our produce open guy. But anyway, so Albert, are you ready for, does that sound okay to you, Albert?
Albert, thank you.
Are you okay, Albert? You're connected today, right? You're with me, yes? Okay.
Yeah, very much connected, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Kim's news,
Kim, how are you?
Then we will get to Dawn Watch and Karen Dawn. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, yes, on the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and let's start by talking about Iran. Mentioned it earlier, but it warrants another mention. 5 Americans now enjoying freedom after years of captivity in Iran. The 5 were flown to Qatar today after the U.S. agreed to a deal that will give Iran access to $6 billion of its own oil revenue that the U.S. had frozen through sanctions. Hunter Biden suing the IRS. That's right. President Biden's son claims IRS agents illegally disclosed his tax return information. The lawsuit was filed in federal court in Washington, D.C. today. It comes just days after Hunter Biden was indicted on federal gun charges. In Oakland, outrage continues to grow over gun violence, the claiming of another victim over the weekend. Police say a woman was killed, actually late last week, after she was struck by a bullet while sleeping in her own home. The 42-year-old mother of 2 is Oakland's 89th homicide victim this year. Neighbors are furious. Gun violence continues to plague the city of Oakland. No arrests in connection with this incident have been made. Can you imagine? You've got your 2 kids in the other room. You're sleeping in your bed. A bullet just comes through, and that's it.
It's inconceivable. It's inconceivable. And I mean, that's the degree to which firearm violence has just become so. It's almost endemic to that community. It's just so common.
It's so common that we have problems reporting on it because is it news if it happens every day?
Yeah.
But then you can't stop reporting on it because, people need to know and be aware.
They say, law enforcement said in regard to this, that this was a targeted shooting, right?
Well, she wasn't targeted, when the bullet came through her window or door or whatever. Yeah.
But they were out there trying to shoot at somebody else and they end up killing this mother.
As is often the case, people get caught in the crossfire. Errant bullet takes out a little kid, even on the freeway. We've seen it over and over again. I just don't know when it's going to be enough. When we get tired of people dying and getting hurt, for what? Let's go to Willowbrook High School.
Thank you. You're right. Errant is a ding word. Go ahead.
An investigation underway into allegations that a South Bay high school football coach shoved an official to the ground. Video that popped up on social media this last weekend seemed to show a coach on the Willow Glen High School sideline walking toward the crew that holds the yard markers and shoving one of them to the ground. District officials say they have been made aware of this
My
incident,
bad.
which
I'm sorry.
took place during a high school football game this last Friday. Yeah, they're looking into it. So we'll
It's
see.
wrong. It's stupid. I'm trying to be a better person.
Oh, that was very good, Albert. Very good. Simultaneous.
Did you hear about this one? This happened in the Southern California area in Lomita. The mother of a teenage girl attacked inside a Southern California McDonald's is demanding answers. The mother of this 13-year-old girl and her supporters demonstrated this last weekend outside the McDonald's restaurant in Lomita, where the alleged assault took place. A video posted to social media shows a grown woman, grabbing this 13-year-old girl by the hair, pushing her to the ground and beating her while other people and McDonald's crew members look on. No one gets involved in this.
She was a McDonald's employee or she was a patron?
It looks like she was a patron. I don't think she was a worker. Mm-mm.
Wow.
The alleged victim's mother wants to know what authorities are doing about possible suspects, also demanding to know why workers didn't jump in to help the victim in this case.
Yeah. I mean, wow. I guess the workers don't want to get involved. I mean, I understand that. But, I mean, if there's a fight breaking out at your workspace and you see somebody, getting creamed that way, don't you try to break it up at least a little bit, especially if there are more than one of you?
I mean, I know it's dangerous. I guess the first thing you do is pick up the phone and call 911.
Sure.
But if this teenager is getting beaten, I would think if enough people came to help, that something could have been done. I don't know. I mean, she's alive, but God, that's so scary.
Yeah, at McDonald's, really, guys? I mean, this is just crazy. We got one lady, she's shot to death in her home. She's asleep. You go to McDonald's, there just seems to be a level of mayhem now that is insane.
Yeah, very insane.
Well,
there's never been anything like this.
No, that's true.
Well, a bill that could lead to up to $1 billion in state funding. For state funding for Los Angeles County's troubled juvenile halls is heading to Governor Gavin Newsom's desk. So let me take the picture of the Golden Gate Bridge down. How about that? The money would be used on infrastructure improvements like the construction of new living quarters for inmates and modernized spaces and rehabilitative educational programs as well. The funding would be given out at the discretion of the Board of State and Community Corrections, which recently shut down 2 of Los Angeles County's juvenile halls due to very poor conditions. But a group of youth justice advocates, along with 2 Los Angeles County supervisors, is urging the governor to veto this bill, calling it a waste of money. It seems to me we need to do something to better the situation because we can't keep people in crumbling facilities. So I don't know. The Kia and Hyundai thefts are on the rise. The thefts of Kia and Hyundai vehicles are especially on the rise in the Inland Empire. The town of Redlands reporting more than a dozen of those vehicles stolen last week. The cars don't have a theft immobilizer, which is a chip in the key that recognizes another chip in the steering column, and that chip allows the engine to start. There have also been several viral social media videos showing people stealing Kia and Hyundai vehicles. So if you have those, Here at Walt Disney World theme park, they're back to their regular operations after a bear spotted inside was captured. Yes.
What? But this is not one of their talking dancing bears that they normally have at Disney?
It's not an animatronic. No. It's the real deal. Florida wildlife officials caught this bear in a backstage area near the Magic Kingdom's Frontierland this afternoon.
Wow.
Disney temporarily closed down a portion of the park.
At least he was in the right land, Frontierland.
That's right. He knows his place, right? Come on. He saw the bears on the sign and he's like, headed this way.
Disney temporarily that this place is fun.
Yeah.
Disney had to temporarily close down part of the park while that bear was first spotted. They think this animal was most likely looking for food since they're normally trying to pack on some extra fat before the start of winter. The Fish and Wildlife Control folks say the bear will be relocated to a nearby national forest. He just wanted a day at Disneyland. What's so wrong with that?
Yeah, well,
A werewolf can kill a vampire. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that. Not necessarily pertinent to the story, but thank you for that.
Oh, this report is sponsored by you, which means we count on you to fund the show. You can find us at themarkthompsonshow.com, themarkthompsonshow.com, the place to find the Patreon and the PayPal link here on The Mark Thompson Show. Again, there it is, themarkthompsonshow.com. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Why are you yelling?
That's not fake. That's real.
It's fantastic.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
Well, it has been already a very productive day. Kind of started in the world of politics, and we've, I think, meandered across some other areas as well. And so, as we do on Mondays lately, we've been meandering into the world of animals, and it's sort of a check-in in a sense on the planet generally, I think, because our relationship with the animal kingdom, in my judgment, is a critical one. We're really, I mean, religious we are, any of us, but, and some of us are maybe we're very religious, but the one part of those religions that speak about the unity of everything, the oneness, is that Buddhism, I guess, talks a lot about that. But if you really see us as all together, we're all pieces of the same stuff, then you look maybe at the animal kingdom and nature around us in a different way. In any case, from that meta concept to the X's and O's of how we handle the animal kingdom. How about it for Dawn, everybody? Karen Dawn from Dawn Watch. Woo-hoo. If you put Dawn in the Google and you put watch after Dawn, you'll come up with Dawn Watch. And Karen Dawn, who's a longtime activist. So what do you have for us today, Karen?
Today, unfortunately, I have the Mustang roundups. Mustang and Bureau roundups that are conducted by our government on behalf of the cattle ranching industry.
Is that the Bureau of Land Management that does that? BLM?
Yes, yes, the BLM. And I'm pleased NBC covered this over the weekend. And I was actually pleased that for once they covered it, and I'm going to ask Albert in a moment to share it with the audio, because I was so surprised that they actually, usually I'm yelling at the television screen saying, it's for the cattle ranchers, it's for the cattle ranchers. And instead they actually presented it as it is. Finally, we've gotten to the point where they acknowledge that it is a battle between the horses and the cattle ranchers. And they round up these horses. It costs the taxpayers $80 million. And they then try and get them adopted.
And where are they rounding them up from? Where?
From the plains in Nevada, mostly. Actually, Albert, if you don't mind sort of playing the video with the audio about, and this is,
okay.
It starts with, you'll see the roundup, and then you'll.
Okay, go ahead, Albert, run it, please.
Albert, thank you.
Every year, the BLM rounds up thousands of horses and puts them in federal corrals, costing the U.S. taxpayer more than $80 million a year. And so in 2019, the Bureau started paying people to adopt up to 4 wild horses each, giving them $1,000 per horse. In exchange, adopters agree to at least one at-home wellness check. Waddell says as a result, adoptions increased to record levels. But a 2021 New York Times investigation revealed some adopters were pocketing the money. And as soon as they could, 12 months later, selling the horses at auctions frequented by slaughterhouse brokers.
You're sending droves of these federally protected animals who helped build this country to slaughter.
And yet, 2 years later, an NBC News investigation found federally branded horses are still being offered up for sale to slaughter brokers. Following a public records request, we found multiple instances of horses adopted through the BLM program, apparently for sale in self-described kill pens.
When they apply for private ownership and it's granted to them, that animal then does become private property. It is no longer protected by the Wild Free Roaming Horses and Burros Act.
Back on the range, the battle between Mustangs and cattle continues, with no obvious way to rein in America's wild horses. Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News, Tonopah, Nevada.
I got the rein in. Clever. The thing here is they're competing for grassland, for grazing land. Is that it, Karen?
It's exactly it. And again, thank heavens the news is finally acknowledging that, so that, Don Watch's thing is to get the news to do a better job of covering animal issues so that people can make informed choices in line with their own values. So if people think it's fine to throw the horses off the land so that the cattle can graze, at least they know that is what is happening. Whereas it used to be presented as, oh, the horses are starving, there's not enough grassland for them, etc. But the truth is, and this is easily, you can Google this and find this out, there were 2 million wild horses on the land in 1900. And there are less than 80,000 now. And that's because in 1900, we didn't have millions of cattle all over the land. So what happens now is that the cattle ranching lobby, which is rich, they pay lots of legislators. It's as usual, the lobbies own the legislators. And so this roundup keeps happening. And we drive the cattle off the land, because the Mustangs off the land and the Boers, because it makes the cattle ranchers happy, because the Mustangs.
That's about money. That's about money.
Follow the money as usual. And I would love it if Albert, I was just going to say, if Albert wants to share some of this video. This is what the roundups look like. And they chase the horses with helicopters, absolutely terrifying, into these corrals. And then this year, the issue was that they got them in the corrals, and then some of them died during the chase. Some of them died from the heat within the corrals. In one of these videos, I said, you guys, you're going to see a horse trying to escape and breaking his leg. I think it's the next one, maybe, Albert, the next video. We see one of the horses who tries to escape. He breaks his leg. And I spared your viewers, Mark, here he is. I spared the next part of the video where you see this guy racing off with his back leg flapping behind him in the wind. They chase him for half an hour like that before shooting him. And what you're seeing now is just people commenting.
Yeah. We can stop with that, Albert. Thank you. I was trying to handle various comments along the way that kind of incense me, but this is obviously a situation that is angering, but Chris, who oftentimes likes to stir the pot, horses aren't native to the Americas. You're not native to the Americas either, Chris, from last I checked. Things have changed a lot since what's native to the Americas. There is absolutely no high ground in blank isn't native to the Americas. We have so changed what's native and what exists in this country from what was actually here in the Americas. So please, just for now, nothing personal, but just stow that argument.
And cattle are not native either.
Of course
we're doing
not.
It for the cattle.
Yeah. And we have, again, thrown off these communities, these wildlife communities, so much because of the unbridled growth of cattle, that we find ourselves in this situation where our government is dealing with this population of horses in this ruthless fashion. So now to the question, what can we do? We, on this show, like to bring some attention to this. You have a newsletter that, talks about the various victories in some of these stories as they exist in the media. What can we do, though, as citizens of this country to make an impact on the situation, which is really gross?
Right. Well, a couple of things. As an animal rights activist, a vegan, obviously, I will always in my book, Thanking the Monkey, which I hope you got a copy of.
I just got, and I want to talk.
Yay.
I was actually going to suggest we talk about stuff from that book today, but let's do it next time, maybe.
Yeah, next time. The section on this in that book is called "Kill a Horse to Eat a Cow," and that's so. When you are eating beef, it's the weird thing about beef is that they are the animals who tend to be the least badly treated of all the animals, in that they do get to graze on these lands until for the last 6 months of their lives, they're sent to these feeding pens, which are horrendous. But
you even say in your book something like you don't say this, but maybe you do say this. I'm trying to remember something along the lines like, if I had to pick all the wildlife or with all the animals that are used in our food, beef is probably the best life of any of them.
That's absolutely true until the last 6 months, which is just as awful as most of them. But at least, when you're driving along and you see cows on the range, yes, they get to graze. The problem is, the reason they get to graze is that we're throwing the Mustangs off. This year in the roundups so far, and they're going to get started again, I think this coming week, 11 Mustangs died during the roundups. But I am going to ask your listeners I think the answer, by the way, is to end these roundups. And it's hard for me because they say one person can do anything, nobody can do everything. And I do not devote myself to the Mustang roundups. I devote myself to general media issues.
Sure.
So it's easy for me to come in and say to the people who are devoted to this, and bless them, they're the reason we have this footage. But they had a court case recently asking that this year that the roundups be put on hold because 11 horses had died. It's horrible. It's inhumane. I would suggest that might not be the answer, and I'd be really interested in knowing what non-animal rights people do feel about this. But very much like Blackfish made it clear, orcas do not belong in captivity. And people finally get it, and we see laws where it's becoming illegal to keep orcas in captivity, and you certainly can't capture them anymore. I would love people to consider, what is the difference when you have a wild Mustang out there in the wild, running along the ranges with his family? What if the roundup doesn't kill them, but they are put in pens? And what if we saw from that NBC coverage, bless them, what happens with the adoptions, that they hold on to them for a year and then they get the $1,000 for adopting, and then they get the money for selling them to the kill buyer afterwards for slaughter. But what if that doesn't happen? What if the animal just ends up in captivity, completely separated from his whole family, being ridden by human children or working in human fields? Is that really okay? Is that any better than it was for Lolita, who we discussed a few weeks ago on the show? And I know your listeners were very, very sensitive to her plight. I don't think it's all that different for the Mustangs. And there's a movie, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And if you haven't seen it, Mark, and if some of your folks haven't seen it, it's called Spirit. And it's a DreamWorks movie. It came out about 10 years ago. And I wish this movie was compulsory viewing in all schools, even in Florida, where it discusses, it's just a movie, a DreamWorks movie, an animated movie with very little vocal, but it's beautifully done. It was nominated for an Oscar. And I'm trying to remember if it got the animated Oscar. And it just makes you question
there it is. Spirit.
Whether there it is. And it's the movie, not the TV show. So if you Google it, it's Spirit, the DreamWorks movie. And it's absolutely beautiful. And you watch it and you really question whether horses belong in captivity. Whether or not they do, they certainly, the ones who are living wild on the range with their family members, I think a lot of people would agree, just leave them there. And it doesn't often get said that it isn't suddenly okay if we do it a little more humanely. The reason I feel so strongly about this is because it's a bipartisan issue, because Republicans love horses as well. And as somebody who monitors the media, I know that the Washington Times, which is the conservative newspaper in Washington, D.C., wrote a couple of editorials maybe 10 years ago against horse slaughter when it was legal in the USA. Then for a while it wasn't legal. Now it's legal again. We've got to get horse slaughter banned, but I think it's time to say we have got to get these roundups banned. And even if you don't think we have a hope of getting them banned, and I actually think we do. I mean, for God's sake, if you look what Cory Booker and Rand Paul did together on vivisection, we can certainly get a horse-loving Republican to join with Cory Booker or somebody else on these Mustang roundups. Even if it isn't to get them banned, a book I may have mentioned on the show before, I will mention it any time I get a chance. It's not an animal rights book. It's a book called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. And it's a book I ask every activist to read, and it teaches us many things. One of them is that you don't sort of yell at people to do things your way. You have to get them to come from their own thinking. But the point that I'm thinking of now is that you never ask for exactly what you really want to get. You ask for more. So if we want the roundups done humanely, oh my gosh, at least ask that they be banned completely. But I actually think we do have a shot of getting them banned completely if we make sure that we do it in a bipartisan way, that we get Republicans and Democrats on board. One of the ways you get to Republicans is mentioning, hey, this is costing taxpayers $80 million a year. Republicans tend not to like subsidies, and this is a massive subsidy to the cattle ranching industry. And Democrats tend not to like massive cruelty to animals, and certainly most Republicans don't either. So I think that is the answer. One is to think about it when you're ordering a steak, that you are contributing to the scenes we just saw. But another is to start to call for the end of these roundups, because they're about to get started again. And
yeah, I really like the second plan, which is the call to the, I mean, obviously I'm already on the first plan, but I like, in terms of this one issue, I would encourage people.
A lot more achievable.
Yeah.
I think you and I agree that the whole world isn't about to go vegan, but why not end these roundups?
I was just in Nevada to see the wild horses, says KF. Called the BLM asking in what specific areas they were. They were abrupt and rude, and now I know why. And why I saw none. Anyone interested at Skydog Sanctuary is what KF is referring us to. So
there's actually a town that is in love with their wild horses and bureaus. And they come into the town and they've named them and they know them by name. And the BLM went and rounded up the horses and bureaus in that town. And the town is trying to buy them back to set them free. This is crazy. This is a taxpayer
That's
expense.
a story. That's a story too, isn't it? Is this the... oh, this is nice for you. So grateful for the Dawn Watch, even though it's brutal to hear. Thanks, Karen and Mark. There you go.
Speaking of brutal, I want to mention to you, Mark, also, I mentioned that Spirit is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful movie to watch, truly enjoyable. And I do recommend it so highly. Less enjoyable, but of a lot of interest to Marilyn Monroe fans and Frank Sinatra fans, is a movie called The Misfits, which was made in, I think, 1963 or something. It was her last movie. And it's beautiful, and her acting is beautiful. And it is about the wild Mustang roundups. Mm-hmm. And you see in this the extraordinary cruelty, and her character in it is distressed by them.
What is the movie? What's that movie?
Misfits. It was Marilyn Monroe's last movie. It's gorgeous, and it's about this issue. The horrible irony is that in filming for the movie, they managed to kill some wild horses.
Oh, I mean, it's just, that's just almost goes without saying.
Helicopter accidentally clipped a couple. I mean,
incredible.
Our relationship with animals is crazy.
Karen, love Dawn Watch because there's oftentimes good news in Dawn Watch. Like you'll oftentimes say, hey, front page story on such and such. And so just the discussion of these things, I think, is good news in itself. We become aware of it. And again, this BLM atrocity that is perpetrated against the wild horse population to allow ranchers unfettered use of this land, it's something that needs to be talked about, and it's something that needs to be changed. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week. Dawn Watch. DawnWatch.com. Bye, Karen.
The Mark Thompson Show.
If you're just joining us, we are a show that came out of... Well, Albert, you have something to tell me?
I'm here standing by.
Okay.
Albert, thank you.
Me too.
Kim, how are you?
All right, then I was just going to say, if you're just joining us, this is a show that came out of the world of radio originally on KGO Radio, which is a legendary talk radio station in San Francisco. So a lot of our audience comes from that world. As we transitioned into YouTube, we've been able to do all sorts of things that we weren't able to do before. For example, have a community that talks to each other in the chat in real time. Also leave comments to various videos and in regards to various stories we do, and to do that after the fact, to watch the show and enjoy it or take it in or get angry at it or whatever after the fact. You can do that as well. So any way you share this show helps us grow the show, and I thank everybody for being here. So in this new environment, new-ish, we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary in October, and we get...
Is there going to be snacks and cocktails on that day?
We don't know yet what we're going to do, but...
I vote for snacks and cocktails.
We got to do something, Albert. I mean, it would be nice to have some sort of...
marching band come through, maybe?
Anniversary thing. Yeah, maybe we could do a meetup too. It's true, we could do. But then I want something that everybody can enjoy. Usually the meetups are only the people who are in the meetup who can enjoy it. But we should do a 1-year meetup. But apart from that, I'd like to do something on the air, Albert. So maybe you can give it some thought.
Albert, thank you.
You're full of good ideas. You know, fresh-faced young man with great ideas. But we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. What I was going to get to is, one of the things that's happened is, into our chat slides, troublemakers.
Yeah.
People who like to stir it up.
It's true.
Yep. You know who you are. Evildoers.
No, no, no.
Oh, that's right. And when evildoers make it in, we crack the whip.
We have processes and protocols and standards.
I didn't know we did have processes, protocols, and standards, but I know that Kim, when she gets out of the lifeguard chair and swims into the ocean, wham, she is about to make an arrest. And she did, I think, today. Yet another.
Yeah, but it's all the same guy, just using different names.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he's kind of a trolley guy. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that was not really a big deal.
Sayonara, sucker!
Yeah.
I screwed up earlier, not on your show, but on Nikki's show, and I accidentally banned some good people, so I have to go back and fix that.
Kim. Yes, Kim is very tough, everyone. She's very, very
It was
tough.
wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Yeah, you're always just one apology away, Kim, from
That's right.
righting the wrong. The
more cha-ching you got, the more cha-ching you get.
Right. That's one of Kim's favorite. I like that one.
The more cha-ching you got, the more cha-ching you get.
Yeah. But anyway, Kim, we love you. So don't worry about the fact that, you crack back on somebody today.
Yeah, have to do it.
Yeah. I got a nice email, which is somewhat unusual.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Let me see. While I look for the email, I got several of them, but I wanted one in particular I wanted to read you. I wanted to ask you about the Costco people. Did you see that? They have the Costco people coming through?
No. Oh, yeah, we do. But I don't think I've booked them yet. I'm waiting to hear back from them.
Okay. And then they say they haven't heard back. Okay. So anyway, this Costco thing is kind of fun. It's a book about Costco and how to navigate Costco. It's kind of funny. I think you'll like it. So that's coming up. If you want to reach us, we're the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com. And I got some pretty positive feedback. First of all, a lot of people like the Coachella Valley coffee.
Good. I'm so
Which
glad.
I'm really happy about because I did recommend it. It gets my top recommendation. That's CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. But do put in Mark T at checkout so you get the 10%. Stuff on Lauren Boebert, who we treated, I think we treated with kid gloves last week. Her getting thrown out of the theater for vaping and for,
Now there's pictures of her doing it.
Yes.
She lied. Imagine that. She said, I just have a very effusive personality, a big personality. It's hard to contain, but I wasn't vaping. You were vaping and being a total a-hole, and you got kicked out for a good reason.
Yeah. Kim, that's our Kim.
Good day, sir.
Right. Too bad Kim wasn't there to throw her out. That's Kim's new favorite side hustle. Yeah, you need somebody blocked or thrown out? That's my thing.
Out.
I'm Kim McAllister.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah.
News person / bouncer. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're all the way down here in Colorado. Well, listen, I can get on a plane. I can be there in 3 hours. Let me bounce her out. Yeah. The also shout out to a new Patreon subscriber, Ken. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah, monthly subscriber to Patreon. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
A lot of people love the Tom Dreesen interview. That's available up there to share if you want to. And what an amazing interview with Tom. I was finally able to listen to the entire thing from Kim. Yeah. So many fascinating stories. I loved hearing the ebullience in your voice as he shared stories from his amazing. I was ebullient. I was very, and that is a ding word. I was very, very taken by Tom Dreesen. His professionalism and connection to days gone by were wonderful. I'm going to share the link with my mom. Again, that's really cool that you guys share it. I really appreciate that. Hi, Mark. This is from Janet. One quick comment. Does anyone else recognize the hypocrisy of the indictments against Hunter Biden? A gun and lying. Yeah. There is... What's wrong with the Hunter Biden indictment is not really related to anything more than what I've talked about last week, which is, hey, man, it's the downside of being a Biden. It's the downside of having a big name. I mean, you made millions on it for a long time. Now you're the head of the spear in an Oppo campaign against your dad. It sucks. That's the way it is. As David Katz said on Hunter Biden, he should have taken the deal. And even though the judge rejected the deal, his lawyers, Hunter Biden's lawyers, should have pushed back on that and taken that deal. Even though it would have left the door open for other prosecutions, they likely would not have come. Now you find yourself in the news all the time, and you're in the news cycle, and you're a burden to the Democrats, to Joe Biden, and to yourself. So, but I get what your point is, which is essentially this charge, which would normally be lying on a federal form. I think Lauren Boebert, who also is guilty of the same thing? One of these, either Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert, the twin towers of crazy, one of them themselves, I think, lied on a similar form. I think it was Boebert. But anyway, the point is something that would normally be handled as a misdemeanor and would not, ever be elevated to the level that it has. It's because he's a Biden, obviously. So you're right. And there's also, hypocrisy, given what has been ignored on the other side. And the last thing I would say is when it comes to influence peddling, wow, the degree to which Washington never called out the influence peddling of the last administration, it's insane to me. You had the president's sons, you had his daughter, you had everyone in that his son-in-law enriching themselves immensely during the administration. I mean, it's crazy that not much has been made of that lately. Now there's more conversation around Jared Kushner and the Saudis than I'd heard even during the administration. But, and that would be illegal, by the way, if if Jared Kushner, after the administration, got $2 billion from the Saudis, if that breadcrumb trail goes back to something he did during the Mideast Accords, during his handling of Mideast negotiations, that would be breaking the law. Again, somebody's got to prosecute it, but that's the fact. So anyway, that's all from that email and just a little bit of a stream of consciousness. Yeah. Albert, do I need to do anything else? I feel like, what's coming up on the show tomorrow, Kim? Tell me, please.
Kim, how are you?
Tomorrow is
David K. Johnson, the Pulitzer Prize winner. And what I thought we have a guest tomorrow, do we not?
I have to
Another
pull up-
guest.
I don't know. You've sprang it on me on the fly. What are you doing?
Kim handles a lot of our guest bookings, so that's
Yeah.
why I ask her.
I
But,
do. If anybody has a great idea for a guest, please email me, and I will. I'll get right on that.
You mentioned
But-
the Costco book. I just remembered this story from a couple years ago. It was the Costco co-founder telling he told the CEO that he'd kill him if he changed the price of the hot dog combo, which is notoriously $1.50. He said, yeah, he wants that to stay the same. So let's survive everything.
Wow, that's a very, very cool thing. So
tomorrow we have Jefferson Graham and David K. Johnston, but it's Wednesday when we have Dick Bright coming through.
Oh, great. Dick Bright's coming through. And when is
What?
Maria coming through?
Maria's coming in October
Okay, cool.
when her
So
book
we've
is
got-
released. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got some good people coming through. We'll get the Costco people lined up. There's a lot going on here. I'm not sure. I don't want to leave. You can tell. You can tell just by the fact that I'm blithering on. Although blithering and blathering is my, Ron Owens would be a great guest, the lady Beatrice says. Ron Owens is not in the guest game, though, anymore, sadly. This is but I love my Ron Owens, and I talk to him frequently, and he is continues to be our squad leader in a weird way, you know.
What the hell is going on in the United States of America?
Love my Ron, but he doesn't feel like he's up to it. So it is hard to say goodbye. Les commentaires. Yes. All right. Kim goes over to the after party live, and that's going to be a great show.
I'll write it and we'll do it live.
It's going to be live. My favorite
I'm
after
Shadow
party.
Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Albert, I feel like I've left something out. I don't know what it is.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
But I'll tell you what it is tomorrow. Until then, bye-bye.